Actually, he can talk about their project, perhaps 3 hours, 4 hours. But I requested him to make it as short as possible. And a couple of important points in my observation are here in Belarus, they are still making a lot of effort to decontaminate the environment and try to, in the attempt to try to minimize the dose, radiation dose to people living there and outside. And food regulation and those direct radiation to people are combined together for their program. And still a substantial amount of budget, national budget has been spent for this. And now next, I'd like to invite Dr. Gilles Eliard-Dubreuil. He is the president of MUTADIS. This is an institute in France. And he has been very much involved in community-based decontamination operations in Belarus as well. So Gilles, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mori. I'm Gilles Eliard-Dubreuil. I'm coming from France. I've been involved in governance research on governance of hazardous activities and in the Chernobyl context since 1991, and this is why I've been invited, and I thank very much the FAIRDO team for inviting me. And also I'm involved in the research project called NERIS. It's a network and a research project that is dealing with the preparation to potential nuclear accident consequences. And it is a fact that very few countries has taken up on board the issue of preparing themselves to potential nuclear accident today, even in Europe, although that we have a strong bunch of experience available. And it is only a starting point, and I'm glad also to be able to come here to bring some of the outcomes of this research. First of all, I would like to characterize the post-accident situations and also underline the specificities of those situations vis-à-vis notably the natural disaster. There is a specificity that is linked with the presence of radioactive contamination, which is a pervasive, invisible and disquieting phenomenon for people in their day-to-day life. It is affecting not only the issue of health, but also all activities, including agriculture, fishery, the value of those activities. It is destroying the social bonds. It is also destroying the relation with nature, with inheritage, and also it is a factor of destruction of culture. And it is observed, it was observed in the Chernobyl context, but I must say that in many ways I have identified signals, common signals with this situation in Japan, that this situation is placing people in a spiral of isolation, stress, social distrust and despair. So it must be taken in account that this situation of long-term contamination is not to follow the usual path of recovery, and also that the complexity of embedded issues that are not to be dealt with separately represent a big challenge for traditional public policies and risk management. And notably, I must say that I have been observing that while we can see in Japan that public authorities are really very keen to do their best to improve the situation, it is clear that this situation cannot be ruled from centralized authorities' criteria. And this is when one wants to deal with this type of approach, that is leading to several paradoxical effects and also some element of social injustice that are characterizing this post-accident context. So very quickly. The experience that can be gained from Chernobyl is based on several projects and a sort of 15 years of experience of trying to modify or to adapt the governance system to the complexity of the situation. These projects have taken place in Belarus, that context that was described previously by Dr. Averin. So main characteristic of those approaches are that local inhabitants and communities are leading the rehabilitation process. They are, in effect, in the position to manage the complexity of problem and to also to make the trade-off, the day-to-day trade-off that are characterizing this type of life. The question of radiological protection is not to be taken in charge as a sole isolated issue, but on the contrary, as part of a global process of recovery of life quality. And this is very important, and otherwise there is no sustainable protection in this context. An important factor also is the fact that local actors have to develop their own expertise while interacting with a plurality of experts. Natural disaster consequences can be very easily identified with the eyes. You can see the actual consequences. Radiological contamination is different. One needs to have a strong bunch of expertise. Another characteristic of those situations is the idea of legal devolution of recovery action to local communities. And this is a very important and very new trend where it is not easy for national governments to adapt their usual policies. And to conclude, I would say that when considering the perspective of post-accident rehabilitation in the Fukushima context, after 1 week spent in Japan, major thrust of this perspective could be described as to create an enabling environment for local communities and people, including legal devolution to local communities, and not only participatory features or information of the population. It's really to give them the opportunity to enable themselves and to drive the rehabilitation actions. Another aspect is to facilitate interaction of people with knowledgeable people and experts from various areas, because the question of rehabilitation entails several dimensions and several areas of expertise, not only the radiological one, although it is an opportunity, has been said many times today, for developing new features of sustainable development. Very important here, again, is the monitoring and predictive tools that should enable local people and facilitate local information and deliberation. And it is the fact that the predictive tools have been in the past big software implemented in big devices of hardware. Now there are very simple tools that can be used on laptop, and there is no reason for local people not to have access to these to those tools. Although the question of trust that has been tackled several times entails the participation of third parties that may facilitate the interaction between the communities and the upper level of decisions. And in addition, to conclude, no one is to say what is the path for recovery, and this entails lots of experimentation handled by the local people, but very much important is the connection of initiative and experiences and the share of the co-evaluation processes of those actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for your very passionate remarks. And he has been emphasizing the importance of bottom-up initiative by people living in contaminated areas in Belarus, and full communication with them, getting honest input from experts is really essential.